1919 was an auspicious year in history. The First World War ended, ushering a drastic change in the world order. The Philippine Islands had been a U.S. territory for 2 decades and was promised independence under the Jones Law of 1916. Progressive reformers saw the country and its people as a major target for modernization, and education was its main weapon. 7 forward-looking Filipinas came together in 1919 to create a school where young women could gain the knowledge and skills that would make them modern women. Paz Marquez Benitez was the first president of the Philippine Women's College. Jose Abad Santos was its first chairman of the Board of Trustees. Francisca Tirona Benitez was the second president, and with her husband Dean Conrado, guided the school from a house on A. Flores Street to its iconic Taft Avenue campus. In 1932, the college became a university, making PWU the first university for women in Asia founded by Asians. It provided a space where innovations in education flourished, and young people were encouraged to be the best that they could be. For over 100 years, the Philippine Women's University has been known as a leader in quality education. In 1934, PWU moved into its main campus on Taft Avenue, and since the 1970s has been co-educational. Located in the heart of Metro Manila, it is easily accessible by public transport and surrounded by affordable housing. Today's PWU offers undergraduate and graduate courses in several fields of study. Its business and management programs are responsive to the needs of industry, using evolving technology for global competence. PWU graduates excel in arts and sciences, education, social work, and diplomacy. Its fine arts and music programs have produced outstanding graduates through a holistic education that treasures heritage as well as excellence. PWU has pioneered in fields such as food science, nutrition and dietetics, medical technology, pharmacy, and nursing. PWU continues to play an essential role in producing graduates who possess the skills that make them competitive in the country and anywhere in the world.
To formally start our webinar, let us have a moment of silence to feel the presence of our Lord with a prayer followed by the national anthem.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome for today's webinar series, Dawning of the Plant-Based Food Revolution.
Presented by the School of Food Science and Technology of the Philippine Women's University. We are now streaming live via PWU YouTube channel.
This is the first session of the series titled Delicious, Affordable, Wholesome, and Nutritious. We are your facilitators. I am Mira Del Rosaroso, a graduate student of Master in Food Science.
And I am Haniling Larga, a graduate student of Master in Food Safety Management. First of all, we would like to acknowledge the presence of our esteemed guests for joining us today.
Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez, President of the Philippine Women's University.
Dr. Emerita Zornosa, Director of Graduate Studies.
Dr. Felina Young, Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs.
Dr. Menchita Dumlao, Program Chair of Information Technology and Head of PWU Technology Integration Team.
Dr. Ligaya Braganza, Program Chair of School of Food Science and Technology. Dr. Ignacio Pablo, Dean Emeritus of School of Food Science and Technology.
Ms. Maria Divina Alcasaras, Professor in Food Science. Ms. Rosalinda Lorilla, Professor in Food Safety Management.
Again, we would like to welcome our 310 attendees to this session, Delicious, Affordable, Wholesome, and Nutritious. Please be reminded of the house rules of the webinar. Please ensure a stable internet connection. There will be a 15-minute question and answer session after each speaker's presentation. Type in your question at the comment box for the Q&A portion.
For the evaluation form, please click the link at the video description. Cutoff for the submission is 30 minutes after each session. Only registered participants who completed the evaluation form will receive the e-certificate per session. Local participants will be prompted to answer the Q&A game before the speaker's presentation. Again, the Q&A game is applicable only for our participants here in the Philippines.
So to start our webinar series, here is Mr. Marco Alfredo Benitez, President of the Philippine Women's University, for the opening remarks.
Dr. Felina Young, our hardworking SVPA and University Chancellor. Dr. Ligaya Braganza, Program Chair of the School of Food Science and Technology. Our distinguished speakers, faculty members, dear students, and everyone watching on our social media pages, good morning. I would first like to thank our students from the MS in Food Science and Food Safety programs who have organized this webinar entitled Dawning of the Plant-Based Food Revolution for the opportunity to address all of you today. And I'd like to congratulate you for a very timely and relevant webinar topic with a very catchy title at that. One that is immensely important not only because of the African swine flu outbreak in the country, but the overall benefits to health and the environment which this plant-based food revolution promotes. It has been well documented that a whole food plant-based diet, or a diet that focuses on only or mostly on unprocessed foods from plant sources, is one of the most healthy diets that a person can follow. Not only does it allow for better weight management by helping a person maintain a lower body mass index, it also lowers a person's risk of heart disease, obesity, certain types of cancer, diabetes, stroke, and other conditions, which in most cases have been the leading causes of mortality worldwide. Aside from the health benefits to individuals, a plant-based diet has been found to be the most environmentally sustainable, while diets heavily based on meat and poultry consumption have been shown to be not only harmful to humans, but also pose significant environmental impact, primary of which is climate change. Industrial livestock farming, for example, produces 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions, more than that emitted from the entire transportation industry. It is also a major cause of deforestation, as forests are converted into agricultural land for livestock grazing, animal extinctions, loss of biodiversity, water pollution, and not to mention significant water wastage. The phrase delicious, affordable, wholesome, and nutritious was something I first heard from Dr. Ignacio Pablo, who has been a staunch advocate of this plant-based food revolution, and not to mention an institution here at PWU. If you have been fortunate enough to interact with Dr. Pablo, who is still young and energetic at his age, you will need no further convincing that the benefits of a diet rich in fruits and vegetables, which, as he says, can also be delicious and affordable. I certainly do wish that we would be able to return to some form of face-to-face classes and events sooner rather than later, as I do miss those enlightening conversations with Dr. Pablo and the passion he has for the plant-based food revolution. Nevertheless, while the positive effects of a plant-based diet are tremendous, as a country, we are still heavy meat eaters. It is our hope that with today's series of talks and discussions, we will be able to shed a little more light on these benefits and hopefully convince the audience that it is actually worth a change in eating habits. I therefore would like to welcome everyone to today's sessions. May we learn more about these delicious, affordable, wholesome, and nutritious plant-based foods and their advantages, as well as regulatory developments, packaging innovations, and the environmental and industrial impacts of a shift towards a more plant-based food consumption. Thank you once again, and good morning.
Thank you for that warm opening remarks, President Marco Benitez.
Now, we are indeed ready to begin our webinar series, right, partner?
Yes, of course, partner. But before we proceed with our first speaker, we want to see the participation for dear local attendees by joining our Q&A game. Again, this Q&A game is applicable only for our participants here in the Philippines. Please click the link in the video description, or you can scan the QR code flashed on your screen. Click the link and fill it up with your email address, full name, mobile number, and your answer to the question. So 3 lucky winners will receive 100 pesos worth of load. Okay, is it clear?
Thank you, Miss Hani. I think that is clear. So, okay guys, the first question is, which among the choices below is the reason why people chose to eat plant or plant-based foods? Is it letter A, plants' health benefits? Letter B, plants are used by some for weight management? Letter C, plants' foods contribution for animal welfare? Or letter D, all of the above? Okay guys, so you have 4 choices to choose from. Again, just click the link or scan the QR code. 3 winners will be chosen using the Google Random Number Generator. Cutoff of entries is 20 minutes after the start of our speaker's talk. We will reveal the answer after our speaker's discussion, so stay tuned. Thank you for participating. Miss Hani?
Thanks, partner. Before we introduce our first speaker, Ms. Mir, do you ever wonder why more and more people are shifting or choosing plant-based foods?
I guess people are seeking plant-based options, Miss Hani, for reasons ranging from weight and health management to saving money to eating more sustainably.
Well, that's right, Ms. Mir. And aside from that, plant-based foods are readily available in the market anywhere and everywhere.
And to discuss more about plant-based foods, let me present to you our first speaker. She graduated her bachelor's degree in Nutrition and Dietetics with Food Service Management in St. Scholastica College, Manila, a registered nutritionist and dietitian. And because of what we are facing right now amidst a pandemic, she did not stop to help herself to grow and try something that will make her continue to move forward. She built her own business in bakery line. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all welcome graduate student of Master in Food Science, Miss Nicole Sison, to talk about plant-based foods and beverage. Is it really worth the hype? Ano yun, guys?
So, good morning, everyone. Again, I would like to welcome you all to our Dawning of Plant-Based Revolution series of webinars. And to start my talk, I would like to first ask you a very important question regarding our subject matter. So, plant-based food and beverage, is it really worth the hype nga ba, di ba? So, yes or no? O hindi? Let's find that out together. So, on my first slide, you can see the words pescatarian, ovo, lacto, and vegan. So what are these? Collectively, these are some of the types of vegetarians that we have. So di ba, when we speak of vegetarian or vegetarianism, this is the practice wherein a person's food intake is composed of plant-based foods or plant-based foods alone. For to be more specific, so when we speak of a pescatarian, so these are the people that consumes plants and seafoods. When we speak of ovo naman, these are the people who consume plants and eggs. And in terms of lacto, they consume plants and dairy products like milk. And then lastly, when we speak of vegan, so this is the strictest among all forms of vegetarianisms kasi they are the only one who consume plant foods alone. But to sum it all up, so their diet is all composed of plant foods. So these people generally has preferred consuming plant-based foods or plant foods for many different reasons. So for one, so some people prefer plant foods because of health. Diba, there are studies and beliefs that plant foods help reduce risk for certain types of diseases, like for example, heart diseases. Some naman because of weight management. So they try to lose weight through consuming of plants. Others because of their care for the environment and animals. And lastly, because of taste. So actually, there are some people that prefer the taste of plant foods over animal foods in totality. So in fact, so because now of these many reasons that we've tackled, so many and more people nowadays have been fonder of plants and plant-based foods. So like for example, so these vegetarians, so because of these same reasons nga, so they are continuously increasing in number. And as of today, so these vegetarians have even reached an estimated number of 1.5 billion worldwide. So, and maybe more in the coming years. So in fact, so because of this increasing preference nga for plant-based and plant-based foods, or the said hype nga for this product, so there had been an increasing demand for them. So in fact, there is an estimation now that the market for plant-based substitutes from 4.6 billion, so way back 2018, it can reach now a whopping amount of $85 billion by 2030. And of course, so that is how much the market nga can grow in the upcoming years only because of the popularity it is. So like in economics, of course, so if there is an increase in demand, we need to back it out with increase in supply. And in this matter, the food industry makes sure of just that. So with the increasing trend and demand nga for plant-based food, so the different restaurants, fast food chains, and food companies comes up with their different plant-based products. And of course, they offer both plant food and beverages. So first off, let's talk about the plant-based beverages. So typically, yung plant-based beverages that we have are milk alternatives. So instead of consuming milk from cows, so we can now get them from different plants. And usually, the beneficiaries of these products are the people whom we call lactose intolerant. So these people acquire symptoms when they consume lactose. So, which is very common in dairy foods like milk nga. The symptoms they experience, so they are usually gastrointestinal, like for example, diarrhea. So these people, instead of cow's milk, they can now consume the following plant-based beverages nga that we have in the market. So some of these we have are oat milk, we have soy milk, peanut milk, almond milk, and coconut milk. So although I think with this one is that plant-based beverages are not enclosed with alternative milks alone. So like for example, as you can see on the picture, we can have both milk and coconut water with coconut. So also a good example will be teas and coffee. So from different plants, we can extract these products, diba? And as a part of the plant-based revolution, there are actually some companies now that try to introduce teas and coffee from plant sources that are not yet famous for such use. So one of which is yung Dr. Alfred. So their company introduces the use of mangosteen for coffees and tea. So a brief highlight lang. So as a good visionary of helping fellow Filipinos achieve a healthy and happy life, so Dr. Alfredo Villarico of Dr. Alfred's nga was successful in producing 100% pure and organic mangosteen teas and coffee. So basically, their products now are good for you because of the xanthones found in mangosteen. So the xanthones actually help protect our body cells from damage. So anyway, going back to plant-based milk alternatives, we basically can buy these products into two forms. So first off, in the supermarkets or groceries, we can buy them as is. And in other entities naman, like example, some coffee shops, we can actually avail of these beverages in the form of cow's milk substitute. So, like for example, if you're buying your favorite coffee or drink that has cow's milk in it, you can actually request in some cafes of replacing it with its plant-based counterpart. So, like for example, soy milk or whichever the food entity has to offer. And of course, so when we have drinks, we have plant-based food. So basically, different food entities around the world, so such as restaurants, fast food chains, and food companies release their own version of these plant-based foods. So some release their own version of a plant-based burger, so which I think is very famous right now because kung mapapansin nyo, many fast food chains enter the plant-based hype na through burgers. So locally lang, so dito sa Pilipinas, from my research, there are about 3 or maybe more fast food chains that offer a plant-based burger. Then some naman also release nuggets, balls, and many others. So in the Philippines, for just an additional information lang, so we have a multinational food company that released both a plant-based nugget and balls and many other plant-based products. So these products I actually saw available na sa groceries natin. So you can just check it out if you want. So in terms of these meatless alternatives are made on a smaller scale. So however, so if the demand for plant-based meat alternative increase more, there is a tendency for its price to lessen or it be more cheaper than animal meat. So bakit? Kasi as you can see on the picture, so higher the demand, that equals higher the production, equals more manufacturing plants will equal less the price because it will now be mass produced. So that is contrary to the reason right now why it is sometimes more expensive. So anyway, so now knowing that we have these kinds of amazing products na pala in the market, before researching on what they specifically or what they are specifically or maybe ordering them, diba? Isn't it better if we'll know more about them first? So like specifically, so let's learn the reason behind it being plant-based. So what are the ingredients used in these products that made them plant-based, diba? So what's inside them? And also, wouldn't it be nice if we know some of the major differences that plants versus animal meat really have before choosing between the two? So first off, so let's go unbox this product. So how does this products really become plant-based ba? So this product, so that we've tackled and all the plant-based products available in the market are called as such because they are made from processed proteins from plant sources that we generally call plant-based meat alternatives. So these products can imitate the chewy texture of animal meats. So we have many types of these plant-based meat alternatives. But just to have an idea about it, let's tackle 5. So specifically, let's talk about the textured vegetable protein, the mycoprotein, the tofu, tempeh, and seitan. So first off, let's talk about the textured vegetable protein. So textured vegetable protein or TVP actually comes from several base materials. Like for one, we have soy, which is yung most commonly used for this. We also have wheat or wheat gluten, peanut, corn, and cottonseed. So from these products, we create TVP or textured vegetable protein through the process of texturization. So we have two. We have the fiber spinning and the extrusion. So basically, this process enables to create a product that is boosted in proteins and are firm and crispy in terms of texture. So first off, we have is the fiber spinning. So in this process, we create PVP by the use of the machine spinneret. So through this machine, so the isolated proteins, which is our starting material, is spun like when we spin nylons. Kaya as you can see on the picture and on the monitor, the end product looks like a nylon. So then we have is extrusion. So in extrusion naman, so we use the machine cooker extruder. So if you will search it in the internet, so there are many types of this machine. The one in the picture is just one example. So anyway, so we create TVP through this machine by placing our starting material, so which is soy flour or soy protein concentrate mixed with other ingredients. And it is placed through the feeding system of the cooker extruder, and then this material passed through this revolutionary machine until it will finally reach the cutting system, where it is now transformed into a TVP. So this TVP comes in many different forms. So it can come into chunks, into slices, into strips, or into granules. So also, so in terms of texture naman, so they are chewy and has a fibrous texture. In terms of its application naman, so it can be used in canned meat, meat extender like in patties, and can also be used in pet foods. So the next up, our second is we have the mycoproteins. So unlike textured vegetable proteins, so mycoproteins on the other hand is made from mushrooms. So they are fungi, which we specifically call Fusarium venenatum. So ayan siya. So this Fusarium venenatum, so it undergoes fermentation and then it is heat treated to be transformed into mycoprotein. So this is how mycoprotein looks like. So it somewhat resembles TVP. Pero to see it more clearly lang, so on the next slide, I'll show you a bigger picture of it. So ayan. So typically, this mycoprotein is 12% water, 3% fat, 3% available carbohydrates, 6% fiber, and 2% ash. So going back, relating it to TVP, so they don't only look the same, their application is somewhat the same as well. So as you can see, mycoprotein are also used in ground beef containing products like for one, we have nuggets, sausages, and burger. Then next up we have is the tofu. So with tofu naman, we only have one base material and that is dried soybean. So to make tofu, so these dried soybeans are first soaked in water, crushed, and then boiled. Then the mixture is separated into two materials. So we'll have soy milk and okara. So in terms of okara, so it will not be used in the making of tofu, although so this material will not be wasted. So I've actually watched one video wherein an owner of a tofu company disclosed that this okara will be donated for animal feed. So all in all, so there is no wastage when it comes to tofu making. But anyway, going back to soy milk, so to make it into tofu, so salt coagulants will be added to it in order to separate the whey and the curd. So then the curd, it will be placed in the mold just like that, and it to drain all the way off. So if it is already fully drained, so we now have yung tofu nga na tinatawag natin. So tofu, it is generally 6 to 8% protein and it is high in calcium, potassium, and iron, which I think is very good. Next up, in terms of its application, so it is mostly used as a protein substitute for meat dishes. Like for one, we have is grilled. It can also be deep fried. We can have simmered tofu, stir-fried tofu, steamed, and sometimes we also consume it raw with syrup and tapioca, which is yung famously known as yung taho sa atin sa Pilipinas. And then fourth up, so we have naman is si tempeh. So like tofu, so the base material of tempeh is dried soybeans. So from here, so the soybeans are soaked in water, then its seed coatings are removed. Then after that, our remaining products will be cotyledons that will be boiled, and it will be drained and cooled. Then it will be placed in a container and be inoculated or introduced with Rhizopus oligosporus, or if we like to buy it in the market, it is called tempeh starter. So once it is mixed together, so it will be fermented for about 40 hours at 25 degrees Celsius. So we'll know that fermentation is complete. So when the tempeh is covered with a white mycelium covering, so as you can see on the picture yan siya. So to see it more clearly, so on the next slide, I'll show you again a bigger picture. So ayan, yun yung white mycelium na tinatawag natin, yung nagko-cover dun sa tempe. So basically, in terms of taste, so tempe is tangy and nutty. So that's why it is considered the sourdough of plants. So also, so as compared with tofu, so it has a more bite to it. So that's why one of the most famous application of tempe is vegan bacon. Then last up, for our fifth meat alternative, we have seitan. So typically when we speak of a seitan, so it is pure wheat gluten. So kaya ang base materials niya is wheat flour and water. So from there, to make it into seitan, so it is kneaded together, then the formed product is rinsed with water. So once it is fully rinsed, so we now have the pure gluten protein, or yung seitan nga na tinatawag natin, that looks like that. So again, to see it more clearly, so here is a larger picture. Ayan. So it somewhat looks like mycoprotein and EVP, pero mas malaki siya. So in terms of texture, so it is dense and toothsome, making it a much more convincing meat substitute in comparison with the first two that we tackled, which is yung tofu and yung tempe nga. So for seitan application naman, since its taste is relatively neutral, so it is versatile to be used in many dishes, like for example, so it can be grilled, fried, skewered like a barbecue, as you can see in the picture. It can also be a ground beef substitute. So to get lang a more insight sa food industry, so with this plant-based products nga and its hype, so I've interviewed an expert. She is Chef Rachelyn Bautista of Ascot, and gotten her insight regarding this matter. So, and for her daw, so plant-based products are indeed nga beginning to be more popular. Although in their company daw, so they are not yet offering the plant-based foods in their menu, but they do have a lot of vegan or vegetarian guests wherein they offer them alternatives like tofu, such as like tofu if necessary. But in terms of taste naman and texture, she says that of course, so plant and animal foods now will not be the same entirely. But overall, she thinks that these are good alternatives to people who strive to be healthy. So now, so we have unboxed nga as to how these products came to be plant-based nga, di ba? So let's now talk about the differences between plants versus animal meat. So again, before we decide in searching and maybe buying these products. So generally, so plants and animals have a lot of differences, but let's focus on some of the things wherein I think it is very important when we compare the two. So let's compare them specifically in terms of protein, so specifically amino acid, carbohydrates, specifically the dietary fiber, the vitamin B12 or cobalamin, cholesterol, and the relationship between disease and mortality. So first up, we have is plants versus animals in terms of protein, specifically nga yung amino acid. So, but before going into their comparison between plants versus animals, so let us first know what is protein nga ba, di ba? So, and why is it very important that even the National Nutrition Council emphasized on the importance of consuming it and even included it in the 10 Commandments. So, bakit nga ba, di ba? So, because generally speaking, so protein or yung protina, so they provide the materials for building the matrix of virtually all parts of the body tissues. So, protein kasi is actually seen almost everywhere in our body. So, we have protein in our muscles, we have proteins in our skin, we have it in our organs like the heart and the lungs, and even in our bones, so may protein pa rin doon. So, it is indeed everywhere. Pero to be specific, so in terms of children, it is important for growth and development, and for adults, it is for the repair of worn-out tissues. But to be more specific lang, so let's grasp some of the things they specifically do in our bodies. So for one, So protein helps us build antibodies that protects us against diseases, which is very timely right now because of the pandemic. Diba? So protein is very important. So also, protein helps the body create enzymes, hormones, and other compounds. So a thing with these enzymes, hormones, and other compounds, is that they are very important to our body because there are many inside each and every one of us, and each one of them has their own functions that greatly affects us. So like for example, the amino acid, which is a constituent of protein. So later on, I will tackle more about that. So going back, the amino acid tyrosine is used together with the mineral iodine to create thyroid hormones. So, and as we know, thyroid hormones are related with certain diseases like goiter. So that is how important each and every one of these compounds really are. So also protein helps in the acid-base balance of the body, and it also transports substances in the body and many more. So, but regarding with the comparison of plants versus animals, the thing we need to talk about in terms of proteins is amino acids. So amino acids, it is a constituent and are the building blocks of proteins. So to sum up, they are the very reason why proteins can do the functions that we've talked about. So in fact, in our body, we have about 20 different types of this. So these amino acids are classified into 3 categories. So we have essential, semi-essential, and non-essential amino acids. So when we speak of semi-essential amino acids, these are amino acids that can partially lessen the need for some essential amino acids. So like for example, cysteine can partially reduce the need for methionine in our body. But the thing here is that, although semi-essential amino acids can indeed reduce the need for some essential amino acids, they cannot totally replace them. So they are just sparers. So when we speak naman of non-essential amino acids, from the name itself, it is not essential or dispensable. So it is not needed in the diet because our body can create it naman. Pero in terms of plants versus animals, the most important thing is essential amino acids. So specifically, we have the histidine, the isoleucine, the leucine, the lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. So because these substances needs to come from our diet because it cannot be created from the body. So in terms of plants versus animals in amino acids, animals are a source of complete protein. Meaning, they can provide all the essential amino acids needed by our body. In contrary, almost all plant foods naman are a source of incomplete protein. Which means, they cannot provide all the essential amino acids that we need. Although, don't fret about it because there is a solution for this. So for people limiting their diet with plant-based foods, they can still accumulate all the essential amino acids that we need by protein supplementation or protein complementation. So in protein complementation, a person can eat a variety of plants in order to get all the essential amino acids. So for example, when we eat cranberries, we cannot have tryptophan because it doesn't have it. But when we add apricot in our diet that has tryptophan, in summary, we can still acquire tryptophan. But another good example lang would be the combination of our 2 local ingredients. When we consume garbanzos, or yung chickpeas in English, we actually acquire from it all the essential amino acids except for one, which is yung histidine. So to complete that, when we add mungo or mung beans in our diet, which has histidine, we can now acquire all the essential amino acids that we need for the day. But the thing to remember lang with these things is it is not necessary that we eat it ng sabay-sabay. As long as you consume it within the day, it is okay because it is a daily requirement naman. So next up naman, we have is plants versus animals in terms of carbohydrates, specifically dietary fiber. So dietary fiber, generally, it is a non-digestible carbohydrate which yields no energy but is very important, especially in the digestive system. So specifically, so for one, they facilitate the passage of food through the digestive tract and favor normal elimination. So nakakatulong siya para makapag-prevent ng constipation. And also, it had been shown, so studies have shown that it also lowers the incidence of diverticulosis and bladder cancer. So diverticulosis, for additional information lang, so it is when there is an outpouching in the gallbladder. So as you can see on the picture, ayan siya. So now, plants versus animals in terms of dietary fiber. So a thing to note here is that animal meat generally lacks dietary fiber. However, plants naman are good sources of it. So the next up we have is plants versus animals in terms of cholesterol. So again, before anything else, let's define cholesterol muna. So cholesterol, like the two, is very important in the body because of the various functions it has. So like for one, it is a precursor of 7-dehydrocholesterol, which has vitamin D activity. It is also part of the bile acid, so it is important in digestion. And also, it is important in the biosynthesis of adrenocortical hormones, so which we all know is very important in the development of secondary male and female characteristics. So like for example, the Adam's apple. So however, so like many other things, it has pros and cons. So the negative thing about this naman is that when our body has an extended elevated high level of cholesterol, it becomes a risk factor for us to have heart and artery diseases. So paano? So as you can see on the picture in front of you, so because of the high cholesterol fatty acids accumulating in our veins, so it stops or slows the flow of blood that goes through our vital organs. So that one causes heart diseases. So for example, when blood flow is totally blocked, it can now cause stroke. So in terms of comparison between the two, so a thing to note here is that animal food contains cholesterol unlike plant foods. They contain negligible amounts only. So the next up we have naman is plants versus animals in terms of vitamin B12. So, or what we call cyanocobalamin. So basically, so vitamin B12 or cyanocobalamin is important in the maintenance of nerve cells and in the formation of red blood cells. So obviously, so when we are deficient with this vitamin, we may have anemia, specifically megaloblastic or pernicious anemia. And in terms of plants versus animals, so an important thing to note here is that this vitamin B12, is found in animals, and like cholesterol, they are not in plants. So although like in protein, this is also resolvable through different processes. So again, so for people with diets that is low in animal meat, so vitamin B12 or cobalamin can be introduced in their bodies through fortification and supplementation. So there are actually many food products that are fortified with this vitamin. So one of which are some breakfast cereals we have in the market. So although maybe not all brands, but I've seen a few that has this. And for supplementation naman, so there are actually a lot of over-the-counter drugs that are available for us that has this vitamin. So last up we have is plants versus animals in terms of their relationship with disease and mortality. So in terms of meat consumption, so there is a journal article that states that the consumption of red meats is associated with certain chronic diseases and early mortality or yung maagang pagkamatay nga. So specifically, it can increase the risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, stroke, and certain cancers. So contrary to plants, so it is said that consuming of plants, like in this paper, so among vegetarians are linked with low rates of coronary heart diseases, hypertension, and diabetes mellitus. So also the rate of cancers among them appear to be moderately low and their life expectancy is longer. So if we'll base this among the things we've tackled, so we can say that in terms of health and disease, plants may be better. So, but yet again, so there is another paper stating that up to now, so there is no enough evidence that can indeed say that when a person replaces farm meat to plant meat, is that yung nutritional comparison will be really comparable. So maybe even if we do nga daw the protein complementation and such, and if replacing it will really reduce our risk for certain diseases. So again, so to support lang some of the things we've tackled, so I've interviewed an expert in this field. So she is Miss D.A.W.N.ing, and currently she is a nutritionist in Marie France Group of Companies. So as per her view, so just like any other kinds of diet daw, so it should still be well formulated in order to be effective. So meaning variety and balance. And also, all in all daw, plant-based diet indeed has its benefits, but is still not the diet that fits all. So she suggests that seeking the guidance of a healthcare team is still the best way to go in achieving and sustaining health. Then one of the things that is very important to what she said is that a lot of factors should still be considered before trying any kind of diet. So in connection with the question we're trying to answer, so plant-based food and beverage, nga, is it really worth the hype? So like in picking diets, before we can really say yes or no to it, we still need to consider a lot more things. So not only the ones I've tackled, but many more. So like for example, so did you know that there are food hazards like toxic substances that are produced during the creation of some of the plant-based products that we have? So these food hazards will be tackled further on the next webinar by Ms. Aida Fucanan. So she is a former plant manager of Nestle and is a much respected individual in her field. So anyway, so that concludes my presentation, and I hope you've learned something from me today. But before I would formally close my talk, I would like to first acknowledge my co-authors, so Ms. Miradel Rosa and Sir Alvin Rafael Boreta, and to our dear professors, Ms. Madivina Alcazabas and Ms. Rosalinda R. Lorilla, and of course to all my dear classmates, thank you so much for all your help, and thank you everyone. Thank you for listening to me today, and I wish you all a blessed day ahead.
Thank you, Nicole, for that interesting presentation. Now we have to our question and answer session. Regarding the presentation, type it on the drop box, and Ms. Nicole would like to answer them. Ms. Mayor?
Thank you, Ms. Hani. All right. Okay. So, Ms. Nicole, are you ready? Okay. So, our first question from one of the viewer. Okay. Here we go. Are plant-based foods bad for the gout or arthritis? Okay. I will repeat again. Ms. Nicole, are plant-based foods bad for the gout or arthritis?
So thank you for that question. No? So if I may recall, the question is, are plant-based foods bad for gout or arthritis? So is it right na, ma'am, here? Thank you. So before we answer that question, let me first explain what is gout muna, diba? Gout is actually a type of arthritis kung saan it is characterized by hyperuricemia, or yung pag sinabi natin hyperuricemia, ito yung mataas yung level ng uric acid sa dugo natin. And basically, if makikita natin yung taong may gout, meron silang mga tophi na tinatawag, or yung pagbuo ng mga crystals sa mga joints. So anyway, so going back sa hyperuricemia nga, so kapag may gout ang isang tao, typically ang binibigay is yung low protein diet nga na sinasabi. Kasi si uric acid nanggagaling siya doon sa mga purines na nakukuha sa pagkain. So once na na-breakdown siya sa body, nakakapag-create ng uric acid. So yung purine, so actually, it comes from foods mostly animal-based. So so basically, pagka low purine diet, ang ine-encourage dito is more on vegetables and pag-drink na water. So hindi siya masama. So hindi siya masama sa may gout at arthritis. Kasi nga sa sa mga fruits and vegetables, although meron some na may purines pa rin, study show na yung laman nitong purine hindi siya enough para makapagtaas nga ng uric acid sa body natin. So basically, ang answer dyan, hindi siya masama sa katawan kasi yun nga yung pinopromote na kainin. Kasi more on si purine, nakikita siya sa animal foods, specifically mataas siya, like for example, sa anchovies, sa bacon, and the like.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Nicole. Okay, here we go. Our second question. Okay, do I need to take supplements of iron if I go vegetarian, since animal meats and liver are the good sources of iron? Okay, I will repeat the question. Do I need to take supplements of iron if I go vegetarian, since animal meats and liver are the good sources of iron?
Thank you, Ma'am Mir, for that question again. So, if I may recall, the question is, do vegetarians need to take iron supplements na, Ma'am? Okay, so basically, I can say no. Kasi, although ang difference lang, iron naman is found both plant foods and animal foods. Ang difference lang, si iron na nakikita sa plants is yung tinatawag nating non-heme, or hindi siya ganon ka-absorbable sa body. Although nagagawan siya ng paraan, so para maging kasing effective ni iron na nahahanap sa plants, yung nahahanap sa animals, so pwede natin i-back out yung mga iron-rich foods, like for example, we have is legumes, mga tofu, tempeh, nuts, and seeds. So para mas ma-absorb siya ng body natin, pwede natin siyang sabayan ng mga pagkain matataas sa vitamin C. Kasi actually, si vitamin C, it promotes absorption nitong mga non-heme nga nito. So, ano ba yung mga pwede natin isabay doon nga sa mga nuts and others na plant-based food na mataas sa iron? So, yung mga vitamin C-rich foods, like, as we all know, yung mga citrus fruits. So, like yung grapefruit, lemon, ano pa ba, oranges, and sa mga non-citrus, we have strawberries, broccoli, so yun. So basically, yung mga vegetarian, as long as maganda yung variety ng kinakain nilang mga plant-based foods, so meron nga nitong mga iron-rich foods nga, like for yung mga example, yung mga legumes, mga tempeh nga na binanggit natin. Tapos ibaback it out natin siya with vitamin C or yung mga pagkain matataas nga sa vitamin C, there is no need to take supplementation.
All right, thank you, Miss Nicole. Okay, another one. What foods can I eat to boost immune system? Okay, I will repeat again. What foods can I eat to boost my immunity system?
So, if I may repeat, no, ang question is, what are the foods that can help boost my immune system? Is that correct, Ma'am Mir?
Yes, tama po, Miss Nicole.
Okay, thank you. So basically, foods that can boost our immune system are foods that are high in vitamin C and E. So although hindi lang vitamin C and E, pero more on pag pinag-usapan kasi natin yung pagkain, tapos immune booster, mostly vitamin C and E yung napag-uusapan. So pag in combination, kasi vitamin C and zinc. So anyway, pag in combination nilang dalawa, mas better siya kumpara kung let alone lang. Pero to just give you a broader sense to it, no, si vitamin C, kaya siya nakakatulong sa pag-boost ng immune system because it is a antioxidant, that's the term. It is a natural antioxidant. So, di ba, pag sinabi natin yung isang pagkain, antioxidant, so it generally helps our body protect us from free radicals. So basically, because of that, so si vitamin C, nakakatulong siya para maprotektahan tayo magkaroon ng mga certain cancers, nakakatulong din siya sa pag-iwas ng mga heart diseases, ganyan. And kaya yun, so ano ba yung mga pagkain mataas sa vitamin C, di ba? So again, yung kagaya ng binanggit nga natin kanina, yung mga citrus fruits and also like nga yung mga grapefruits, orange, tapos yung mga non-citrus naman na mataas, we have si apple, si strawberry. So also, you can also include with vitamin C is si vitamin E. So actually, kapag pinag-combine mo silang dalawa, mas effective sila kumpara kung gagamitin mo sila alone. So si vitamin E naman, so actually nakaka-help siya to boost immune system. So for one, si vitamin E, so yung mga veins natin, natutulungan niyang i-widen yung veins natin. So yung mga, so like for example, sila cholesterol na pwedeng mag-stock doon, natutulungan ni vitamin E na ma-prevent yun. So ano naman yung mga pagkain mataas sa vitamin E? So we have peanut butter, we have peanut, ano pa ba? We have avocado, and many others. So yun, so to sum it up, so foods that can help us boost our immune system, we are foods rich in vitamin C, E, and zinc. So that's all, and thank you.
Thank you, Miss Nicole. Okay, another one. Are these products more healthy to take despite the ingredients that were integrated to form the burgers, nuggets, coffee, or etc.? Okay, I will repeat again. Are these products more healthy to take despite the ingredients that were integrated to form the burgers, nuggets, coffee, and etc.?
Sorry, Mamir, if it's okay, may you please repeat the question?
Okay. So are these products, I think this is particular to plant-based products. Okay. And these products are more healthy to take despite the ingredients that were integrated to form the burgers, nuggets, coffee, etc.
Okay, so thank you for that question. No? So basically, so as of this moment, I cannot say yes or no to that. So as I've said on my last slide, so there are actually a lot of things to consider before deciding whether it is healthier or not. Kagaya nga nung nabanggit natin kanina, so susunod na webinar, so Miss Aida Fucanan will explain, for example, din sa pagpo-produce nga ng mga plant-based products, there may be food hazards. So kagaya nun, for one, we have to take that into consideration to answer that yes or no. And not generally, it depends on the ingredients processed by manufacturer. So we must always see the label and nutrition facts. So lagi natin i-consider yung mga bagay na yun, pero makikita naman yun sa likod ng packaging. So kahit pa paano, if we are not much aware of that, pwede naman natin siya mabasa sa likod.
Okay, thank you, Miss Nicole. That question is from Maylene Talato. Okay. Another question. Okay. How can you make TVP more palatable? May aftertaste talaga siya. So, ibig sabihin, paano mo siya magiging appetizing or gano'n, or mas magiging flavorful yung TVP kasi may mga aftertaste talaga kapag pinaprocess natin ito.
Sorry, ma'am. If it's okay, can you please expand on that again?
Okay. So the question is from Jonathan Santos. How can you make TVP more palatable?
So to make it more palatable, no, and to stay it and to maintain it more healthy, so I can actually advise on rinsing it. So basically, possible na mabawasan yung aftertaste nga na sinasabi natin from rinsing, and para ma-maintain yung healthiness niya, so pwedeng gamitan, pero maging palatable, so pwede natin din siyang gamitan ng mga herbs and spices. And of course, and to add lang, no, dun sa pagre-rinse, so to be more specific, para mas matanggal natin yung aftertaste niya, pwede natin ibabad yung TVP sa tubig ng mga 5 to 10 minutes. So anyway, additional lang pala dun sa spices, pwede rin tayo gumamit ng mga herbs. So herbs actually is, they are considered as a free food. So unless specified by the physician, so maganda rin gamitin si herbs kasi wala siyang wala siyang masyadong nabibigay na calories sa food. So in turn, napapasarap niya yung pagkain without much addition sa calories. So yun lang. So to sum it up, so you bake it in water for 5 to 10 minutes to reduce the aftertaste, and to make it more palatable but still healthy, you can add spices and herbs to it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nicole. Another question from Nick Canarejo. What plants are high on protein that are locally produced in the Philippines? Again, what plants are high on protein that are locally produced in the Philippines?
If I may recall, the question is foods that are plant foods that are high in protein that are locally available.
Yes. Correct po, Ms. Nicole.
Miss Nicole, please unmute, please. Please unmute. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't notice that my mic was off. So again, if I may repeat what I said, no. So from my slides, so we actually tackled a few of a good protein sources of plants that are found in the Philippines. So if I may expand it again, so we have the garbanzos for one. So na-explain nga natin kanina na si garbanzos, kompleto yung essential amino acids na kulang lang si histidine, meaning good sources siya of protein kasi yung amino acids na meron siya is very comparable with animal sources. We also have the mungo. Also, we have the soybean. So si soybean, kaya din siya for one, sikat siya sa ginagamit na ma-produce yung mga alternate meat alternatives nga is because good sources siya ng protein. So to sum it up, so we have garbanzos, we have mungo, and we have soybean for local products that are good protein sources.
Thank you, Ms. Nicole. Okay, Adi. Okay, let's go to another question. From Romy Ignos. Okay. How about carotenoids and anthocyanins? Does it help certain immune system? Again, how about carotenoids and anthocyanins? Does it help certain immune system?
I'm sorry, Ma'am Mir. If you don't mind, would you please repeat the question again, no?
Okay. Sure po, Ms. Anne. Okay. How about carotenoids and anthocyanins? Does it help certain immune system?
So basically, carotenoids, kagaya siya ni vitamin C, they are also antioxidants. And so going back to antioxidants, so kagaya nga nung na-explain nga natin sa kanina with vitamin C, since antioxidant siya, so pareha sila ni carotenoid, meaning nakaka-help din sila mag-protect ng body natin from free radicals nga. So to repeat, itong mga free radicals ngayon nakakapag-cause ng mga certain cancers sa katawan natin, nakakapag-cause ng mga ilang sakit, kagaya ng mga heart diseases. So meaning, if protektado tayo sa mga free radicals, kagaya ng ginagawa ni carotenoids, so meaning, nakaka-help siya, meaning it is good for the health indeed. And of course, not an additional lang and bukod nga dun sa pagproprotect sa atin sa free radicals, so meaning good siya for the immune system. In terms of eye health din, maganda rin si carotenoids. So parang if using carotenoids, meron ka ng 2-in-1. I hope that answered that I have answered your question with that. No?
Thank you, Ms. Nicole. Okay. For last question, here we go. What plant-based foods help to boost our immune system to fight COVID-19 virus? Oh. So again, what plant-based foods help to boost our immune system to fight COVID-19 virus? From Colin Techno.
So okay, if I may repeat, no, if I understood the question correctly, ano yung mga the question is ano yung mga plant-based foods that will help us, that will protect us from COVID-19, no, ma'am?
Tama po, Ms. Anne.
Okay, so I think this question is very much somewhat similar dun sa earlier question, no? Pero ibang phrasing lang. So I can say, so yung mga plant foods na makaka-help sa atin maprotektahan tayo sa COVID-19 or in general, so lahat ng mga sakit is yung mga pagkain ng mataas sa vitamin C and yung zinc. So like I have expanded earlier, so si vitamin C, di ba, kaya nga siya sikat kasi most famously known siya for boosting our immune system kasi nga it is an antioxidant. So basically, ano ba yung mga foods na mataas sa vitamin C? Again, yung mga citrus fruits nga, so yung mga grapefruits, oranges, atis, and such. Pero to be more you should eat a variety of fresh and unprocessed foods every day to get lang yung vitamins and minerals, dietary fiber, protein, and antioxidants that your body needs. So also drinking enough water would be beneficial, and also drinking water are best pala. And of course, exercise. So always remember na hindi dahil na yung pagkain natin ng mga variety of foods, di ba nga nakakatulong makapag-boost ng immune system natin yung para maprotektahan tayo sa mga sakit, kailangan yan sinasabayan or tinutulungan natin ng exercise at pag-inom ng tubig. So basically, hindi lang pagkain. So to sum it up, you should eat a variety of foods. So kung gusto mo plant-based ka, so eat a variety of plant foods para nga makuha mo yung iba't ibang mga vitamins, iba't ibang mga, for example, yung mga amino acids from variety sources. Then you need to exercise and drink water.
Thank you, Miss Nicole. Miss Honey?
Thank you, Ms. Nicole, for that very interesting talk. And thank you to our 490 plus participants for all your inputs to the discussion. And I hope that Ms. Nicole answered your questions. If we were not able to answer your questions due to time limitation, you may still send them to our official email address, pwufoodtrends2021@gmail.com. Ms. Nicole and our team will try to answer them. Going back to our Q&A game, the correct answer is it's letter D. So congratulations to Richard Longbian, Josel Procal, Christian Mark Soleta for winning 100 pesos worth of load. Our team will get in touch with you through email or text message. Ms. Mayor?
Thank you, Miss Honey. Thank you, Miss Honey. Again, congratulations to all our winners. A quick reminder to all, only registered participants will be eligible to receive an e-certificate upon completion of the evaluation form for each session. Please click the link at the video description. Your responses to the evaluation form are very much appreciated and will be used for further improvement for our future webinars. Please take note that we will be accepting your evaluation form only until 12 June. Ms. Hani?
Thanks, partner. Before we start with our second speaker, again, we want to see the participation of our dear local attendees by joining our Q&A game. We will be flashing the QR code on your screen, or you may click the link at the video description. So our question is, plant-based foods are organic foods that can be beneficial to human health if prepared according to the 5 keys to safer food by WHO. So is it true or false? Again, 3 winners will be chosen using the Google random number generator, and cutoff of entries is 20 minutes after the start of our speaker's discussion. We will reveal the correct answer after the discussion of our second speaker. So, all right, our next topic is about food safety hazards in plant-based foods.
Wow, so the second topic is very interesting to me, Miss Hani. Like, does plant-based food still have possible hazards?
Yes, Ms. Mir. And even if this plant-based product, there are still BCPs or biological, chemical, and physical hazards associated with it. It is the same as other products, which also undergo processing, which may affect its whole attributes.
I see. So that's why we need to listen very carefully for this informative talk.
And to start with the second speaker, she earned her bachelor's degree in food technology from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She started working as a research and development specialist in San Miguel Corporation. She continued her career in Nestle Philippines, handling different product lines ranging from chilled and fermented dairy, ice cream, milk powders, culinary products, coffee mixes, and beverage powders. These were spread among the several positions that she held in the company, such as application manager, application group manager, production manager, plant manager, and other positions within the technical division. So, including expatriation assignments in France as a project manager. Her expertise and competency in food industry will show how much she value and love her passion as a food technologist. Dear participants, one of the pride of Team Food Safety, let us all welcome Ms. Aida Fucanan in her topic, Food Safety Hazards in Plant-Based Foods. Ms. Aida?
Thank you for the introduction, Ian and Mira. Good morning to our viewers, classmates, our webinar organizers, and to our sponsors from PWU. In this segment of the webinar, I will discuss food safety hazards in plant-based foods. Now, when we talk about plant-based foods, we will not only focus on the processed items na uso ngayon, such as the plant-based meat alternatives. We will also look at the possible hazards in fresh produce, from where raw materials of plant-based meat, plant-based seafood, o kaya yung plant-based egg, or even plant-based milk are derived from. And because fresh produce is a substantial part of the plant-based food consumption. We heard earlier that there is a significant increase in consumption of plant-based foods. And with the increase in consumption comes there's a possibility, di ba, of increase in incidences of foodborne illnesses that are related to plant-based foods. Now, why? Maybe because with the increased trade of these foods across the globe, with the globalization of the food supply chain, comes the possible transport of biological hazards at increased frequencies as well. Previously, if these foods were consumed at a lower volume before, therefore there would have been lower incidences of biological or chemical hazards. And with the increase of demand, then producers just might look for lower cost and faster methods of production, and just might overlook safety, food safety, in terms of the novel plant-based foods. Although some of these products have been in the market for 30 years already, it has only been recently that such products are picking up momentum in terms of consumption. So we might say that these are still early days on our understanding of their hazards, especially those related to allergens. Therefore, there is a need to refresh on our understanding of the hazards and their prevention. These are just some of the guidelines and regulations that apply to plant-based foods. Like from Codex, the CAC RCP 53/2003 on the Code of Hygienic Practice for Fresh Fruits and Vegetables. A local one from BAFPS 49/2011 on the Good Agricultural Practices for Fruit and Vegetable Farming. And then from EU, the EC 396/2005 on the maximum residue levels of pesticides in or on food and feed of plant and animal origin. And the ISPMs, or the International Standards on Phytosanitary Measures on Fruit Flies by the International Plant Protection Convention, or the IPPC. These are just konti lang to. These are there are numerous other guidelines on the subject, and some will be discussed in further detail in the afternoon session. So I hope you stay on till the afternoon session. So even the United Nations declared 2021 as the International Year of Fruits and Vegetables. The objective is to raise awareness on the importance of fruits and vegetables in human nutrition, in food security, health, and in attaining the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. Now, the food safety hazards that I will go through are just the tip of an iceberg that is spanning a few subjects that you go through in several semesters when you take a food science program. logging. PWU actually offers several food science programs. Okay, the classifications of food safety hazards are biological, chemical, and physical. These classifications apply to any type of food, whether plant-based or otherwise. And these are the common manifestations of ingesting biological or chemical hazards. Diba? We are all familiar with this. Or sometimes the adverse health effect will show up in the body after several years pa. In the case of physical hazards, these may cause choking or damage to the oral cavity. Or the worst happens from any of the biological, chemical, or physical hazards. So let's look at some biological hazards to watch out for. There are the Enterobacteriaceae, the toxin-producing bacteria, the cyclotrophs, and the parasites. First, the Enterobacteriaceae. The Enterobacteriaceae or the EBs, ang haba kasi, are some of the most common culprits in foodborne illnesses. Some common EBs are Salmonella, Shigella, and E. coli. They can occur in fruits and vegetables that are eaten raw, such as in lettuce, salads, dips, dried herbs and spices. Actually, there was a recent outbreak in the US, last Q4 of 2020, wherein leafy greens were contaminated with E. coli 0157H7. The outbreak was spread across 18 states. There were reported 40 illnesses and 20 hospitalizations, and fortunately, 0 deaths. They could not pinpoint the exact source of the contamination, but they identified that there were some cattle livestock uphill from where the farms of the leafy greens were being grown. Or the EBs might come from cross-contamination from water, foods, utensils, and even food handlers. Or from a failure in a manufacturing process, such as, can you go back to the previous slide? Okay, thank you. Or from a failure of a manufacturing process, such as insufficient pasteurization, or in a household kitchen, that's insufficient cooking. Or from recontamination after the cooking process. In the case of the product in the photo, it's organic dried coconut chips. There was actually a case, again in the US, because I think they have a more efficient collection system on data related to foodborne illnesses. There was a case of product recall in the US because there were batches contaminated with salmonella on these organic dried coconut chips. Now, the product was either coming from Sri Lanka or the Philippines, and the report did not also say which country exactly. It was actually the importer who initiated the recall. And the report also did not say at which part of the manufacturing process the product got contaminated with salmonella. So it could have been anywhere, even during packing of the product. Okay. And related to the manufacturing process, for most food products, tests for EB are usually the microbiological reference parameters required by the Philippine FDA. The EBs are usually used as the indicators of good hygiene and effectiveness of the manufacturing process. This information on the table is lifted from FDA Circular Number 2013-010 on the revised guidelines for the assessment of microbiological quality of processed foods. I'm showing here some ingredients or some are finished products of plant nature with EB as the reference criteria. Now, to explain this chart, let's look at the first one as an example. Frozen vegetables and fruits with a pH of greater than 4.5. Some examples of these fruits are avocados, papaya, yung melon, bananas, etc. It gives here the E. coli as the EB test microorganism. The chart is saying that for N samples, in this case 5, you can see that from the table, C should be a maximum of 2. That means only 2 samples out of the 5 can have an MPN per gram of more than 110. But none of the 2 samples should have a value higher than 10 to the third or 1000 MPN per gram, which you can see under the big letter M. Next, the toxin producers. Okay. The Staphylococcus aureus it's just one example of toxin-producing bacteria. They not only contaminate food, but while they thrive, while they grow in the food, they also produce toxins that they leave on the food. Some examples where they can occur are in raw fruits and vegetables such as lettuce, leafy greens, and sprouts. Or they can come from cross-contamination from utensils and even from infected food handlers, such as those with boils on the skin. And there are even studies that found that Staph aureus is sometimes present in acne. Although this is not always in the study. It's not 100%. The results did not give 100%. It's about mga, if I remember, about 40% of those whom they tested with acne actually had Staph aureus in the acne. So hindi siya laging andoon. The bacteria can be killed with processing, such as heating, but then the toxins that they have produced are usually not deactivated, and the toxins, of course, will stay in the food. Now, if you leave actually cooked rice out, syempre mainit sa atin, no, at our hot ambient temperature for several hours, toxins can be produced within that time if your rice has been contaminated with Bacillus cereus. So, uso pa naman sa atin yung eating the bahaw, di ba? Pero, well, there's a risk there. And then, we go through the psychrotrophs. Now, the psychrotrophs, such as the Listeria monocytogenes and the Yersinia enterocolitica, are a group of bacteria that can, they not only survive cold temperatures, they can actually multiply even in cold conditions, such as that in the refrigerator or in the freezer. And in the case of Listeria monocytogenes, they are even salt tolerant. They can occur in raw fruits and vegetables and tofu, especially from cross-contamination from dairy, poultry, and animal meats. And then the parasites. The parasites can sometimes be easily seen with the naked eye, or Some can be microscopic, like the Cyclospora cayetanensis. So not everything are worms, no? Some can be microscopic. They can infect raw fruits and vegetables such as raspberries, lettuce, and basil. I cite here raspberries kasi although it's not very popular here, of course, it's important. But these are from actual cases. That's why I included it here. Infection can come from fecal contamination of water and soil. The Cyclospora cayetanensis normally thrives in tropical parts of the globe. Ngayon, in 2020 also, there was a case in the US involving this parasite. Of course, the US is not a tropical country, alam naman natin yon. But the Cyclospora, so bakit may Cyclospora? The Cyclospora came from an imported shipment of organic fresh basil from the tropical part of Colombia. The shipment with the parasite was eventually recalled by the importer. So, how do we prevent these hazards from getting into our plates? Now, according to the World Health Organization, promoting health by decreasing microbiological contamination starts at the source. So when growing or sourcing your fresh produce, ensure that the 5 keys to growing safer fruits and vegetables are followed. This is especially relevant now with the rise of the plantitos and plantitas during quarantine times, and more people are growing their own fresh produce. So the 5 keys to growing safer fruits and vegetables, first is to practice good personal hygiene. So number 1 din, di ba, even for COVID, for any infection, practice good personal hygiene, so especially that. Protect fields from animal fecal contamination. Use treated fecal waste. Only treated. Evaluate and manage risks from irrigation water. And keep harvest and storage equipment clean and dry. So, at home naman, healthy food defeats its purpose if not prepared in a safe manner, di ba? So, sayang naman. Especially now during quarantine, we prepare most of our meals at home. So, practice the 5 keys for safer food, which applies not only to plant-based foods, but for all types of food prepared at home. Now, what are the 5 keys to safer food? Keep your hands and surfaces clean. Number 1, lagi yun, keep your hands clean. Separate raw and cooked food. Cook food thoroughly, especially the EBs. They can actually be easily killed with pasteurization, with the proper pasteurization or proper cooking. Keep food at a safe temperature, and then use safe water and raw materials. Now, in a manufacturing environment naman, such as in food factories and in food service establishments, follow the general principles of food hygiene as recommended by the World Health Organization, which is actually based on the same basic principles as the 5 keys to safer food. It's just more detailed, more detailed in, but the basic principles are really, you'll see that it's really quite very similar. Okay, so for the next types of food hazards, the chemical hazards, I'm giving some examples which may be grouped into natural toxins, environmental contaminants and agrochemical residues, food process toxicants, intentionally added chemicals, and allergens. So first, the natural toxins. One example of natural toxins is a group called the cyanogenic glycosides. These are natural defense mechanisms of plants against stressors. Some of these glycosides are linamarin, amygdalin, promycin, which can occur in cassava, sorghum, seeds of stone fruits, bamboo shoots, tapos almonds. Now, how do we prevent them from being harmful to us? Through processing, such as baking, boiling, roasting, fermentation, and dispose them when they are bruised, damaged, or moldy. Now, another group are called glycoalkaloids. Production of glycoalkaloids is a defense mechanism of potatoes when exposed to sunlight, bruising, or infestation. Examples of these compounds are solanins and chaconins. I think we hear a lot about solanins. These are actually natural pesticides and fungicides that the plants produce to protect themselves. They can occur in green sprouting potatoes and green tomatoes, although in lesser concentration in green tomatoes. Now, how to prevent them from harming us? Avoid use of green sprouting potatoes because the glycoalkaloids are heat stable, so cooking them will not eliminate the toxins. Next, the lectins, an example of which is the phytohemagglutinin. This is another case of the plant trying to defend itself against physical damage, so it produces this toxin. These can be in kidney beans, soybeans, lentils, peas. So prevention, actually the body has its own mechanism. When we eat a high fiber diet with mucilaginous vegetables, the fibers bind with lectins in the gut. Eat a variety of foods so that any bad stuff that you pick up from one food would be offset by the good in another type of food, di ba? Kaya nga eat a variety. Tapos, in the case naman of beans, soaking beans in water prior to heat processing reduces the lectin content. So in practical terms, when we make taho or tofu, we normally soak the soybeans in water overnight to soften them for grinding, di ba? But actually, the soaking also helps eliminate the lectins if they are present in your raw material. Now, the next type of natural toxins is not for the plant's defense. It's caused by molds, and molds just want to live. Gusto lang nilang mabuhay. And since they are everywhere, and then if we provide conditions that are favorable, they would grow on food. The problem is, as some species of these molds thrive, they also produce mycotoxins. Some species, not all, pero some do. And these mycotoxins are stable to processing. Some examples of these are aflatoxin, fumonisin, patchoulin, marami yan. Like if you store peanuts, corn, cereals, dried fruits, spices in warm, damp, humid conditions, then molds can grow. We can prevent growth of molds by selection of the more fungal-resistant varieties of these plants. We can control infection in the field and control moisture during harvesting and storage. So those are the means to prevent growth of the molds that cause that produce mycotoxins. Okay, and then some things are really just poison, no? Okay, I am including here, some of you might be wondering, no? I am including mushrooms here, even though, lalo na the biologists, even though the biologists would say that mushrooms are not plants naman, bakit kasama sa webinar nyo? Well, they are from the kingdom fungi. They are not from the kingdom plantae. But in terms of plant-based consumption, mushrooms can be part of the plant-based diet. So that's why they're here. Because they contain proteins of about 3% and their texture can be similar to ground meat, then they are often used as meat alternative for people who are trying to avoid meat. In fact, my version of meatless lasagna, I used actually mushroom kasi parang meat. So we can only avoid the poisonous types of mushrooms to avoid their lethal toxins. And then the environmental contaminants and agrochemical residues. Okay. Now, contaminants in the environment can find its way into our plates. Plants take up nutrients from the soil, water, or air where they grow. Ang problema, not everything that they take up are nutrients. They also imbibe chemical contaminants which may be present in the environment where they're growing. Like, for example, in the case of our common kangkong, if these have been grown in polluted waters, they take up the lead or cadmium which are present in the water. Therefore, the heavy metals are more concentrated in the parts of the plant nearer the roots. So, cut off the roots, in the case of kangkong. And verify the sources of produce. Wash them thoroughly, remove the outer layers if this is applicable. And then also if it's also applicable, then peel them in the case of fruit crops. Now, the future of farming is hydroponics, di ba? It's a very interesting topic. No, but even with this advanced farming technology, some caution is needed in choosing the plastic material for growing the plants. So hindi pala basta grow ka lang. Plastic pipes made of PVC or polyvinyl chloride, the PS or the polystyrene, and polycarbonate may contain these hazardous chemicals that leach out and are eventually absorbed by the plants that are being grown. So instead, source your fruits and vegetables from hydroponics farmers who use PET, HDPE, or LDPE. Because from the study, these plastics do not leach out harmful chemicals into your hydroponics farming. Now with crops, we know that pesticides and fertilizers are used by farmers. So, okay lang naman, di ba? Hindi naman natin pinapaban. Of course, these are necessary unless you are planting organic. With agricultural practices, there is a proper way of dosing and a proper time when to stop applying these chemicals before harvest to minimize their presence when the crops are sold or when the crops reach you. So verify that your fresh produce sources or in your factories that the agricultural raw materials that you will use are from responsible growers who follow these good agricultural practices. Or if you have the facility, you can check for the presence of these chemicals through chemical analysis. Next, on the food process toxicants. Some process conditions can lead to formation of toxic chemicals, like in the case here of 3-MCPD. These are formed during hydrolysis of vegetable proteins when we use hydrochloric acid. This can happen in the production of vegetable oils or with soy sauce of questionable quality. Now, prevention is to control the hydrolysis process during production or by neutralization of the acid after hydrolysis, or wag na lang gumamit ng hydrochloric acid for hydrolysis and use alternative acids instead. Now, acrylamide. Acrylamide are carcinogenic substances that form during high heat processing of starchy foods. Some of these foods that are prone to acrylamide formation are potatoes, coffee, cereals, grains. Acrylamide formation is prevented by control of the heating process. Now, to simulate real meat, modified food starches have been used in some plant-based meat alternatives as part of the formulation. Now, the modified starch content of these foods are not exempt from acrylamide formation during grilling. Next in the chemical hazards are those intentionally added into the food item as part of the formulation. Now, intentionally added chemicals are the additives that we put into processed foods as part of the formulation because it has some function. So, hindi naman natin ilalagay dyan kung walang silbi, di ba? One example is the propyl gallate or the E310. Now, it functions as an antioxidant so that the food will last longer in the pack for a wider distribution. But for some people who are sensitive to propyl gallate, they can experience some allergic-like symptoms. So there have been cases of this. No? We will talk more about allergens in a while. Propyl gallate is usually added to processed potato products, processed nuts, and processed cereals. Control of usage as recommended by PNS is up to 200 parts per million of the fat or oil content. Now, the next type of chemical hazards is important due to its prevalence. The allergens. Now, a huge segment of concern when it comes to plant-based foods is allergens. Allergens are protein in nature, and the major nutrient from animal-based foods are proteins, di ba? Proteins in plants are harnessed for the purpose of replacing animal-based proteins in a plant-based diet. So we heard that earlier from Anne. So what are allergens? Allergens, when ingested, are the body's immune system that is overreacting to certain proteins in the food. Now, allergies can be manifested either as simple and mild cases like hives, temporary or mild abdominal pain, or the allergic reaction can be life-threatening also, as in anaphylaxis. Now, these are the big 8 allergens as identified by the US FDA, which the Philippines follow actually for products sold in the local market. The reason why US FDA lists only the first big 8 is because these 8 already comprise 90% of all food allergy cases in the USA. So, and then notice that half of the US FDA's big 8 are from plant-based foods. The tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, and soya. So kalahati, di ba? The EU lists 14 allergenic ingredients, wherein similar to the US, if these are present in the prepackaged food, a proper warning should be visible on the pack. If you look at the list, 8 naman out of the 14 allergens required by the EU to be declared on the pack are from plant sources. So, andyan ang soya, sesame, peanuts, nuts, lupin, which is a legume, mustard, celery, and cereals containing gluten. For non-prepackaged foods, persons with allergies to the 14 should avoid consuming these. Peas and chickpeas are of the legume family, and so are peanuts and soybeans, which are listed as two of the top 8 major food allergens. So magkamag-anak sila, di ba? Peas, chickpeas, and other legumes, because of their high protein content, are being used as ingredients for plant-based meat products, as well as other applications where protein fortification is needed. With the increase in consumption of peas, chickpeas, and other legumes, because of the increase in consumption of plant-based foods, there has been a corresponding increase in reported incidences of allergies to legumes. We have seen all kinds of plant-based alternatives to cow's milk. The more common ones are almond milk, oat milk, and soy milk. Actually, marami pa iba. For all of these plant-based milks, they have the inherent taste of their plant-based source. So soy milk has that beany soy taste, di ba? Oat milk tastes like oat, almond milk tastes like almond, etc. In the case of this plant-based milk from France, the characteristics mimic that of cow's milk, including the taste, nutritional profile, and even the cost. It is coming from fava beans and algae. And since fava beans are legumes, then they carry the same allergen issue as any other legume. Even algae itself has its own share of allergen issues. Of course, needless to say that cow's milk, which it mimics, is also a top allergen, di ba? Now, more on legumes. Legumes are high in protein, so legumes are a common go-to solution when you are trying to replace animal-based proteins, including eggs. These are mung beans, or our common mungo. So the mungo has been developed into this scrambled eggs, although plant-based scrambled eggs. In the ingredients list, it says that it contains soy as an allergen, so compliant, diba? Kaya lang, but it also contains mung bean protein isolate and transglutaminase in the label, which are both allergens, although not in the US Big 8 or the EU Top 14 allergen list. And it is not just legumes that we are seeing an increase in reported allergy cases. Some of the reported allergies were related to some fruits, vegetables, cereals, and grains. Examples of these cases related to those, examples of these cases are related to those in these photos. So, ano yan? Kaya andyan yung photo ng fruit or veg or whatever. It's because merong case na nangyari, a reported case on allergen. So for fruits, there's peach, kiwi, apricot, banana, cherry, coconut, yung familiar sa atin, lychee, mango, melon, orange, pear, pineapple, strawberry, tomato. You'll see them in the photo. Ngayon, on the vegetables naman, on the photo on the right, there's asparagus, avocado, bell pepper, cabbage, carrot, lettuce, potato, pumpkin, turnip, zucchini. On the grains, on the photo in front, there's barley, corn, oat, rice, rye, tapos wheat. Now, the commercial plant-based products that use mycoproteins comply with the allergen declaration warning on the pack. So again, yung mycoproteins are coming from fungi, a type of fungi. So remember what I said earlier about the kingdom fungi and the kingdom plantae and why they are here, no? They declare eggs or gluten on the label. So that's good, no? The eggs or gluten are used as binders so that the filaments of mycoproteins can form a meat-like structure. So you'll see on the left side of the photo, after fermentation, when they're producing the mycotoxins, this is actually the product, filaments of fiber and protein. But of course, it's in individual filaments, no? So they need a binder for that. And that's where the egg and the gluten come in. They serve as the binders for these filaments para meron kang meat or plant-based meat. But other than those two allergens, comes the question if mycoproteins in itself are actually allergenic kasi syempre may proteins. Owing to the fact that allergens are protein in nature and mycoproteins are mainly made up of proteins and fiber. And as in any other protein food, there's always the potential to be allergenic. One huge brand of alternative meat that uses mycoproteins has been in the market for 30 years already. And then there is a study that I cited here on the references wherein the authors studied the incidences of allergy due to mycoproteins. And they concluded that there have been incidences of mycoprotein allergies. It's not zero, but then they also concluded that the incidences are exceptionally low. So how do we prevent and control allergens? Now, people with allergens, syempre should avoid the ingredients that they are allergic to, di ba? Kaya lang, for them to be able to do this, they need full disclosure from manufacturers. In some countries, especially in the EU, even takeaway packs are required to indicate allergen warnings. Like in the case here in the photo in the middle, it's oat cookies na takeaway pack, and there's an allergen warning on the front, on the label, no? And then on the photo on the right, this menu is from a temporary food outlet. It is from a weekend food market in Ireland, and it shows a good example on how allergens are being disclosed to consumers in non-prepackaged foods. In this photo on the left naman is another good example of how manufacturers give warnings on possible allergens. Although peas are not one of the big 8 allergens that is required in the US to be disclosed on the label, this company is doing due diligence by writing on its pack a warning that people with severe allergies to legumes should take caution because this product contains peas. So it is better to err on the side of caution when it comes to declaring potential allergenic ingredients. So, pwedeng tularan itong company na to, di ba? The third type of food safety hazard is physical hazards. Some examples of these are foreign bodies and foods themselves that are choking hazards. The first, foreign bodies, no? Foreign bodies are extraneous materials that can cause injury. These may be in the form of glass, metal, hard plastic, stone, wood, or even pest fragments. These are approximately 7 to 25 mm in size and can damage the mouth, teeth, the throat, or the digestive tract where the food will pass through, or where the foreign body will pass through. So how do we prevent? Through a responsible and adequate maintenance program, for one. good warehousing practices, good hygienic practices, good manufacturing practices, like having a no glass or no wood policy inside the production area where your foodstuff is still unsealed in its packaging. And then the choking hazards. Now, this is an example of a food that is a choking hazard in itself. The konjac plant, yung parang tuber dyan sa photo, has been used in Japan, China, and Korea for centuries already. The fiber is made up of glucomannan, which accounts for its very strong gel that can be formed into different shapes, such as slabs and noodles, that, like the photos I showed here. The gels are so strong that it does not melt in the mouth with yung normal chewing. Unlike other gels like gulaman, karaginan flan, or soya gels like taho. So it is not recommended for children and those with difficulty in chewing. And if it is to be consumed, the pieces should be cut very thinly or small. There has been one case of death reported in Australia before the konjac jelly was banned there. It was also banned in the EU. Now, konjac flour as an ingredient, the flour as an ingredient is not banned in the Philippines. Of course, there is a whole slew of discussions on choking hazards, such as how a whole piece of grape can be a choking hazard for children. We decided to include this this type of plant because of the global rise in popularity of this type of plant-based food. It is being used kasi for weight management because it is low in fat, it is low calorie, and it has very high fiber content. Now, plant-based ingredients have also been having bad publicity. Some, like nuts, grains, legumes, are denounced as anti-nutrients. These are due to the presence of some components like phytic acid, lectins, and tannins. These can reduce the body's ability to absorb nutrients such as minerals like calcium. But these same ingredients can also be beneficial because of their phytochemical content. The phytochemicals function as antioxidants, antimicrobials, and some are blood glucose or lipid-lowering compounds. So they're beneficial also. The anti-nutrients can be reduced through simple processes such as soaking in the case of nuts, tapos sprouting in the case of legumes. But again, warning on the E. coli when you're sprouting legumes or when you're buying sprouts. Fermentation, washing, or boiling. And in terms of nutrition, this is also one reason that it is recommended to eat a substantially wide variety of foods, as wide as you can manage, not solely limited to grains and legumes. Now, there is a food safety debate naman, whether genetically modified food is safe or not, whether it's in the long term or short term. Now, some plant-based meat or burgers are very open about being non-GMO, while others maintain to be GMO-free. The manufacturers actually make no hidden claims about this. In making one of the brands of plant-based meat, from the root of a plant that gives flavor and color, the DNA is taken and injected into a yeast and then grown in controlled conditions to be added as an ingredient in the plant-based meat. So, as the debate on genetic modification of food continues with an open disclosure whether the product is GMO or not, then the consumer is left to make his own informed choice whether he would like to consume the food or not. Now, in conclusion, we have a lot. Plant-based foods has its own long roster of good merits. But the terms plant-based foods are not automatically synonymous to healthy food, organic, or hazard-free. Now, with the increasing use of a wide variety of plant-based proteins in novel foods, we likewise increase our awareness of emerging allergenic reactions. Contaminants that can be found in plant-based foods can be as hazardous to health as those found in animal-based foods, especially those that are eaten raw or those that are allergenic. So careful with your HACCP study in the case of manufacturers and the food service establishments. In processed plant-based foods, the aim of these foods is to replace animal proteins in the diet, so a big watch out is allergens from plant-based proteins. Now, preparing safe food, whether animal or plant-based, requires a certain level of knowledge on the risks involved. And having said that, we apply care. Now, the increase in consumption of plant-based foods is a revolution. It is not a fad. It is here to stay. It is a fast-rising segment in the food industry. It is the result of the dawning of a better understanding of foods that drive human health and the genuine concern of humankind on the environment. This better understanding is knowledge. When we have knowledge, then we are better equipped in our roles in food safety. And as food science practitioners, we have the responsibility in ensuring that the hazards that may come from foods are prevented, controlled, and congruously regulated. We try to increase awareness like what we are doing in this webinar, because food safety is everyone's responsibility, such that even non-professionals who prepare food are made aware of the hazards in their prevention, so we can serve food that is delicious, affordable, wholesome, and nutritious, or D.A.W.N.ing. This afternoon, we will hear from the next speaker about the food hygiene codes that are applicable to plant-based foods. Now, under the guidance of Professor Lynn Lorilla, Professor Debbie Alcazabas, our Dean, Dr. Ligaya Braganza, and our Dean Emeritus, Dr. Ignacio Pablo, who is the originator of the meaning of D.A.W.N., the team composed of Pia Lynn Naputo, Carmela C., R.R. Boreta, and myself were able to produce this segment of the webinar. So in behalf of the team, kami yan holding the letters, I would like to thank you for your attention. Now, following are the references and photos that we used.
Thank you, Ms. Aida Fucanan. That was a very informative presentation, and I hope we all took the advantage of absorbing this information. Now, we will proceed with our 15-minute question and answer session. For questions regarding the discussion, please type it on the comment box, and Ms. Aida Fucanan will try to answer your questions. Ms. Hani?
Thanks, Ms. Mir. So questions are coming in. So are you ready, Ms. Aida?
Okay, shoot.
For our first question, in terms of salt content, is it true that plant-based foods contain very high salt that can be bad for those with high blood pressure? Again, in terms of salt content, is it true that processed plant-based foods contain very high salt that can be very bad to those with high blood pressure?
Yeah, actually, yes, that's actually one of the parang negatives. That's one of the negative publicity on plant, the processed kinds. I'm talking about the processed kinds, yung mga, especially the plant-based meat alternatives. If you will look at the label, actually, I think these manufacturers naman are being very open about their sodium content because they declare it on the label. And if you compare the labels of the different brands, you will see that there's a difference. If you're counting your sodium, like in the case of those who have hypertension, if you're counting your sodium, then I would recommend that you look at the pack because the information is there. Kasi if, for example, if we compare it to animal-based meat, we can say that animal-based meat, maybe 7 milligrams of sodium in a patty of a burger, in a burger patty. But it also the sodium will also depend on the food, on the person preparing the food, because well, the advantage for that is that you can control the salt that you add, but then some people would also prefer saltier beef patty, for example. So baka papantay lang siya doon sa plant-based version. But of course, yun, to each his own way of preparing it. Pero yun nga, the advantage lang of the processed ones that you can buy in retail, they actually write the sodium content on the label. So I would recommend always check the label for sodium content. If you're trying to control your sodium consumption per day.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Aida. Another question.
Yep.
So what can you recommend if we cannot verify the source of the fresh produce that we eat? Again, let me repeat the question. What can you recommend if we cannot verify the source of the fresh produce that we eat?
Okay. Thank you, Ian, for that question. Actually, yes, that would be difficult kung if you don't buy yung mga fresh produce that come with the brand, kasi yung usually if it's branded fresh produce, they would have a website then, di ba, where you can get information or you can get in touch with them by email to ask. We can actually ask. We can actually email them and ask about this information. No, yung what are their practices, yung mga ganon. Yung ano naman, in the case of if it's not branded, di ba uso naman yung suki sa atin? Actually, personally, I ask my suki for fruits and vegetables where they source their fresh produce. So open din naman sila about it, and then if you find one that is really quite credible and reliable, then I suggest go for it, di ba? Ngayon, if naman you are in a food manufacturing establishment naman, of course you have methods to do this. Like if you're getting raw or fresh produce as a raw material, then you can verify with chemical analysis, or you can pre-verify, or you can accredit your supplier for their practices. So these are actually being done. Ngayon, if there's totally no information that you can get, I suggest you go back to yung slides kanina, because there are ways naman to minimize its presence, like yung what I mentioned for the kangkong. maybe cut off more of the root parts because it's more in the study that I cited there. They found that it's more concentrated on the root parts, and if you're still not sure, then maybe you can cut off more of the stem, yung that hollow stem ba tawag doon? That hollow parang stem, and maybe just go for the leaves. Parang gano'n, if you're really not sure. Tapos, yun nga, you can also peel, you can also, wash them thoroughly, of course, your fresh produce. Tapos, what else? You can peel, or you can, remove outer layers as well. Para lang, so you can minimize your exposure to the bad stuff. So, yun, I hope that helps answer the question.
Thanks, Miss Aida. Another question from Miss Carmina C. The prevention of acrylamide is to control the heating process. Are there certain temperature or time for heating process?
Yeah. Oo. I cannot say one specific temperature kasi syempre it will depend on the food that you are cooking, and also the type of the starch content in your food. Yung the photos there, yung sa bread, it's just saying na wag mong para bang if you go for yung middle ground, then you can be safer than yung mga with the burnt parts, yung mga nagtututong na, yung mga ganon. Personally, I like yung burnt pero I'm trying to I like the taste of burnt, but I'm trying to control ang tawag dito, yung not so burnt, and yet it's still tasty with by some other means. So it will really depend on what you're cooking. Now, if you're really interested in a specific type of food, then just post the question in Q&A, and maybe we can get back to you on what specific food item we can look at, and then try to see if there are studies on related to what you're asking. Pero yun, as parang from visual management of the acrylamide formation, maybe you can adopt those tips. So yun, I hope that helps.
Thanks, Miss Aida. So another one from Miss Patricia Araneta. Are the allergens in plant foods, or it is because of chemical fertilizer inputs and GMO specimens? Again, let me repeat the question. Are the allergens in plant foods, or is it because of chemical fertilizer inputs and GMO specifications?
Okay. So, medyo, it's a very loaded question, with a lot of topics, and it's a very interesting question. Thank you for that. Actually, if you saw kanina yung sa allergens, and when we discussed yung chemicals being used when fresh or plants are being grown, merong it's not necessarily always because of the chemicals that you put in the plant-based foods, because some allergens are actually inherent in the plant, because that's its nature. Like for pulses, for example, mungo, whether you applied chemicals when growing the mungo or not, the mungo would still contain the allergenic ingredients. Kahit organic pa yung mungo, it would still have allergens because it naturally contains proteins which might serve as allergens to those who are allergic to legumes or munggo in general. In the case naman of GMO, kaya it's a debate eh. Actually, the debate is whether it's safe or not. Pero again, it's the same analogy eh, whether it's GMO or not. If the food actually contains some proteins, like in the case of mycoproteins, it's not allergenic because it's GMO. Parang ganon. It's a mycoprotein and ayun na nga, dun sa word yung protein, and we know that allergens are protein in nature. So whether it was produced GMO or what I mentioned earlier, yung from the root part of that soy plant, they actually extract the DNA and then put it in yeast. That makes it GMO. But if you extract that thing from the root part of the soy plant, and then you don't inject the DNA into yeast, but then you use it as is, so it's not GMO, di ba? Pero it can still be allergenic if you produce mycoproteins out of it, or if you add it into mycoproteins, di ba? So yun, it just so happened that the heme, yun na nga, the heme yun eh, yung GMO that they put into as an ingredient into the plant-based meat. So ang allergenic actually is the plant-based meat as a whole, what do you call that, as a foodstuff, because of what they put inside, not necessarily because it is GMO. Magulo ba? But I answered the question.
Thank you, Miss Aida.
Ayun.
So I think this is our last question. So I
Okay.
just, from Miss Marlene Brandia, just want to know, why is microprotein listed among the plant-based alternatives since it came from fungus, which is not from plant? So what is the best answer for this?
Okay. That's another interesting question. It's the reason why when we were coming up with the slides, we wanted to explain that okay, we know it's similar to the case of mushrooms. No, we know that mushrooms are not plants; they are from the kingdom fungi, nga, as I said earlier. And then it's ganon din for mycoproteins, because as the word says, myco, so it's coming from fermentation of a certain fungi. Yun. So technically, I mean, biologically speaking, it's also not from the plant kingdom. It's also from the fungi kingdom. But we decided to include mushrooms and mycoproteins here because if you're trying to avoid meat, the vegetarian diet can use, well, a lot of vegetarians can also use mushrooms and mycoproteins as part of their diet because they're avoiding animal proteins or animal foods. So yun, yes, there is a distinction in terms of biology, you know, if we will go into further into yung classification ng kingdom and phylum, ganon. Yeah. Pero if you ask a typical vegetarian, maybe we should have made a survey, no, prior to the seminar. Do you actually consume, if you're a vegetarian, do you actually consume mushrooms or mycoproteins as part of your diet? Actually, ako rin kasi, I'm a vegetarian. Siguro mga 95% vegetarian, the 5% is on 5% pescatarian. But when I eat and I try to avoid animal-based foods, I include mushrooms, and I've been eating yung mycoproteins nga, yung mycoprotein-based plant-based food. Yun, it's part of my diet because I know that the protein content in those foods can also be beneficial, and yun nga, it's still avoiding animal-based proteins. So, yun. Did I answer the question?
Okay, so
Okay.
thanks, Miss Aida, for that enlightening session. And thank you to our participants for all your inputs. So going back to our Q&A game, the correct answer is false. Not all plant-based foods are organic. Congratulations to Lincoln Lim, Justin Ann Maribong, John Liagas for winning 100 pesos worth of load. Our team will get in touch with you through email or text message. Ms. Mayor?
Thank you, Ms. Hani, and congratulations again to all our winners. Now, let us proceed with acknowledging the people who have given us their time, knowledge, and expertise for this webinar. We would like to request Dr. Menchita Dumlao, Program Chair of Information Technology and Head of PWU Technology Integration Team, to award the Certificate of Appreciation to our two speakers, Ms. Nicole Sison and Ms. Aida Fucanan.
Okay, good morning to everyone. So it is my honor and pleasure to award our first certificate to this certificate of appreciation is awarded and presented to Ms. Nicole A. Sison for being our resource speaker for today for the topic plant-based food and beverage. Is it reality worth the hype? During the dawning of plant-based food revolution webinar held on the 16th of February, year of our Lord 2021. Signed, Dr. Maria Ligaya T. Braganza, Program Chair, School of Food Science and Technology. Thank you very much, Ms. Nicole A. Sison, for that very informative talk. We appreciate it a lot. And for the next one, the same citation is awarded to Aida, Ma'am Aida R. Fucanan, as the resource speaker on food safety hazards in plant-based food. Also during this dawning of plant-based food revolution webinar held on the 16th of February, the year of our Lord 2021, also signed by Dr. Maria Ligayati Braganza, Program Chair, School of Food Science and Technology. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, and congratulations.
Thank you to Dr. Dumlao and to our two speakers, Ms. Nicole Sison and Ms. Aida Fucanan, for joining us this morning.
All right, so we are very grateful for our 500 attendees for joining our first session for our webinar series, D.A.W.N.ing of the Plant-Based Food Revolution. We would like also to encourage everyone to subscribe to our social media accounts, especially our PWU YouTube channel, and like our PWU Facebook page.
Okay, so for our registered participants, again, please accomplish the evaluation form to receive your A certificate for this session. Just click the link at the video description and you can submit the evaluation form after the first session. Your responses to the evaluation form are very much appreciated and will be used for further improvement for our future webinars. Please take note that we will be accepting your evaluation form only until 12:30 noon.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Mayor. To those who are interested to watch the replay of our webinar, please stay tuned to PWU Facebook page. Our two-part webinar series will continue this afternoon with session 2 entitled Upshot on Regulatory and Environmental Issues at 1 p.m.
So once again, thank you to our speakers, Ms. Nicole Sison and Ms. Aida Fucanan, for that very good and informative talk. To open our webinar series, D.A.W.N.ing of the Plant-Based Food Revolution, presented by the School of Food Science and Technology of the Philippine Women's University.
On behalf of our team from Food Science and Food Safety, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you on our afternoon session. This has been Haniling Dolarga.
And this is Mira del Rosaroso. Thank you and keep safe, everyone. See you on our afternoon session.